Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Fearless Warrior podcast. Today, I get to hit record with another amazing coach and friend of mine, Henna Pryor. We are connected as fellow coaches through Limitless Minds, founded by Trevor Moad, Russell Wilson, Harry Wilson, and DJ Edison. Some amazing names you might recognize in the mental performance space. I have watched Henna as a workplace performance expert who speaks and writes about performance mindset, interpersonal dynamics, high impact communication, and embracing bumps in a world that keeps optimizing in smoothness. Her book, Good Awkward, she encourages us to lean in to the awkwardness and to help us be more successful. She's also a regular expert columnist for Inc. magazine and a global keynote speaker. She gets to travel the world, empowering others, and I'm so honored to get to have her share her wisdom with you today. So with that, Henna, welcome to the pod.
Thank you for having me. I feel like, Amanda, you and I have circled for like over a year now, and I'm so sad to say this is probably going to be our longest conversation. We need to fix that after the podcast too, for the record.
It's always in a group, but that's okay too.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I've been asking recently that I love is it goes beyond our titles, beyond our intros. Who is Henna?
At the core, Henna Pryor is a girl who has been on a lifelong journey to untangle the difference between love and worthiness. And I think worthiness is very tied up with this idea of approval, of doing it right, of being the best, of getting the A, of making sure her parents were proud of her. And for a long time, I think I thought and assumed that in order to feel enough or in order to feel loved, I had to deem myself worthy. And so I think a lot of my work has really been driven by that personal underpinning.
Worthiness. That is
Mm-hmm.
a great topic. Let's just dig in. What are you doing as a person to create these ripples into the world? So tell us with a little bit more context. How are you
Yeah.
accomplishing this? I know you're an author, I know you're a speaker, but what does your day-to-day life look like when you're on this mission?
Yeah, I think, without making it sound simplistic, it starts with us, right? And so I'm no good to be a teacher or an idea generator to anyone else unless I spend at least 30% of my day trying to figure out my own stuff. And so for many of us, we can read books, we can have tools, but if that deep self-awareness of understanding our own mental blocks, our own limiting beliefs, our own conditioning, our own wiring, our own deep-rooted training, if that's not there, then we're only going to be in service to others so much, right? It's going to have its limitation. And so I think on a day-to-day, there has to be, for me, an equal mix of input and output. So input is reading books, working with coaches, listening to podcasts, talking to friends who I trust. We just mentioned some shared friends, Colin Henderson and Charlie Smith, are people who love me, but will give it to me straight, and that's such a beautiful gift in self-awareness. And so I think as much as I can, I try to make sure, not necessarily in a given day, but let's say in a given week, that there's a good balance of working on myself, building my own awareness, my own inner, work in order to feed the outer work. What am I learning and how could that be of use to other people?
I love that you bring that up because one of the surprises that a lot of my athletes will kind of underpin or their eyes get really big and they realize, wait, but you're a coach. You do this work for a living. You can't
Mm-hmm.
possibly have negative thoughts. You can't possibly
Yeah.
experience these things. It's the when I concept, right? Like when
Yes.
I get recruited, when I get that dream job, when I make it to a certain level, then it'll
Right.
just disappear.
Yeah. And it's funny because I think that's true of every discipline to some degree. And one of the main concepts from the book that tends to resonate for people is, you know, the book in my case is about awkwardness, right? The emotion of awkwardness. But one of the things that people learn pretty quickly in the book is that the most confident people, the people that you admire, that you feel like are flawless, they never get it wrong. They never have egg on their face. They don't get to avoid awkwardness. They have just worked on improving their comeback rate. So when that moment happens, when that feeling comes, they're able to recover from it a lot more quickly. They're able to come back from it a lot more quickly. I think that's exactly true of what you just said, which is you, Amanda, me, Henna, who teach mental performance, we have negative thoughts. We're not made out of stone. Of course, we have negative thoughts. But what
Yeah.
we've learned to improve is our comeback rate. What we've learned to improve is maybe we can't choose that first thought, but we can choose that second thought. I think that is a powerful knowing. Don't ever feel bad about being human. The improvement edge is, what are we going to do about it? How can we improve that rate of return?
Right. Well, and I think the pressure cooker comes from when we say, okay, yes, Henna, like preach, I feel this, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But when it
Mm-hmm.
comes down to it, when I'm in that pressure cooker, one of the things our athletes always say is, I am terrified to let my teammates down. I'm terrified. I
Sure.
don't want to let my parents down. I want to let my coaches down. And so, what's your advice in that string of awkwardness of like, are you letting, you talk about this in your keynotes in your book of
Mm-hmm.
we let awkwardness stand in the way of on the other side
Yeah.
of what's
Yeah. So it might be helpful to just quickly define
yeah.
awkwardness in this context. So awkwardness is a social emotion of discomfort. So we can talk all day about getting comfortable, being uncomfortable. I know on your podcast and in your work, you do a lot of things about mental skills and discomfort. Awkwardness in particular is a social discomfort, meaning if I am practicing, a move in the backyard, if I am saying someone's name out loud and I mispronounce it, but I'm by myself and nobody was there to see it or hear it, I might feel something, but awkwardness is usually not it, right? Nobody saw me, and therefore I don't feel awkward about it. When we do those things in front of other people, right? We have a missed play, we bungle something up, we fall on our face, we say it wrong, we make an advance at someone that gets brutally rejected, right? When it happens in front of someone, we feel awkwardness, we feel embarrassment. So it's a social emotion of discomfort. And while it does share traits with other ones, what's unique about this one is because it's a social emotion, it has a lot to do with our experience with approval. Whether
Mhm.
we realize it or not, we are constantly scanning our environment for, do other people approve of what they see? And at the next level, do they like what they see? And we start to change our behavior and our expectations based on that lens. And so, just to give a little bit of context, this is not a bad thing. This is how humans evolved. We are creatures of social belonging. We don't want to stand out. Back in our cave people days, if we stood out too much, we'd probably get killed, right? If we stood out too much, we'd get kicked out of the tribe. We'd get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. It's just helpful to know that we have those same brains. And so, this standing out, instead of feeling like we might get killed, now instead we feel awkward. We feel embarrassed. We feel flushed in the face. But it is sort of like an evolutionary version of the saber-toothed tiger, but the saber-toothed tiger's not here anymore. So instead we just feel like idiots all the time, even though the threats are not as big as we think they are.
That's a great way to explain. A lot of the times athletes will come, I'll ask you this question is
Yeah.
athletes will say, Henna, I'm crushing it at practice. And you mentioned in the backyard, that makes so much sense because if it's a
Mm-hmm.
social emotion, if
Yeah.
I can sink, I'm shooting hoops in my driveway and I can sink those threes, no problem. I'm not worried about who's watching me shoot hoops. But as
Right.
soon as I'm on the free throw line or as soon as I'm in the game with a crowd full of people and the buzzer and all the social norms of
Mm-hmm.
performance, what would your advice be for an athlete of like, okay, I know this now, thanks, Henna, but what do I do with it?
Yeah. It's typically one of two things happening. It's either, an opportunity to refine our focus skills, which is to just, narrow the vision, narrow the aperture. Can I focus on the one thing in front of me? Or the recognition that we're giving over attention to the things that are happening around us. So one of the big findings that people quote a lot in, business psychology is the spotlight effect. So Cornell psychologist Tom Gilovich talks about the spotlight effect, which is we think people are looking at us way more closely than they actually are. So we think the spotlight is on us like intensely, brightly. Oh my God, everyone is picking apart everything I do. Now, here's the thing about athletics. If you are in a game and there are people in the stands, of course they are watching you. I don't want to be naive and be like, nobody's really looking at you. Of course they are. That's the game. But here's the version of that that comes into play. After you bungled that play, they're not thinking about it 10 seconds later, right? Yeah, they saw you, but you're the only one still obsessing over it. They've already moved on. So that spotlight, while it might be bright on you momentarily, it's not following you into the next hour the way you probably feel like it is. Like you can't stop thinking about it. You're hooked by it. You think other people still think, oh, you are this kind of person now. But actually, they're already like, is there something on my shirt? Is that cute boy looking at me? Right? Like they are already onto their own spotlight very, very, very quickly. So it's just helpful to know, which is it? Usually it's a combination of both. And so that's something that can be trained. I mean, you know that as well as anyone. I know that's the work that you do with people is we can train ourselves to filter out the noise and rewrite how much attention are we actually giving this thing that doesn't have as much power as we think it does.
Right. Training self-talk, training routines,
Yeah.
focal points, grounding. I mean, you're nailing it on the athletic side. Tell
Yeah.
me more about the corporate side. This is a lot of the corporate.
Yeah.
We have a lot of parents and coaches. And so we could talk about
Yeah.
spotlight effect of coaches
Sure.
being on the hot seat or parents. How does
Hmm.
this relate to just beyond
Yeah.
athletics?
Yeah. I think, to be awkward is to be human, right? If you are a neurotypical human being who experiences social dynamics in a neurotypical way, you're going to feel it. It's basically what happens when there's this gap between this person that we believe ourselves to be and the person that we think other people see in that moment. So again, if you're an athlete or if you're a financial analyst, it's okay, I bungled something up. This person that I believe myself to be, a good pitcher, a strong financial analyst who knows how to use numbers, right? All of a sudden did this thing where it didn't go the way I planned. I either, bungled a play or I said something in a meeting that didn't sound right or I was wrong about it. In that moment, we're like, "Oh my God, that's not who other people saw." They think I'm an idiot. They think I don't know how to throw. They, whatever it is. And in that gap between these two selves, the version we believe ourselves to be and the version that we think other people see, we feel awkward. We feel uncertain. Something feels socially unsteady. But the big learning for people is that that gap's not going away ever. It's not going away. The more you try to improve at your game, at your craft, the next level of success that you're trying to get to, that gap is going to show up bigger and bolder than ever. It's always going to be there if you have someone whose goals are constantly moving up a little bit. So the goal isn't to learn how to eliminate the gap. The goal is to learn how to get comfortable in it, to recognize, okay, cringe, that was embarrassing. But we can either tell ourselves that was embarrassing, I'm an idiot, I never want to do that again, or you know what, like good for me for having, this cringy feeling in my stomach because it means I'm trying something. It means I'm putting myself out there. It actually kills me right now when, millennials and youth are like, oh, it's so cringe, it's so cringe. I'm like, everyone who's doing anything worth a damn right now is
Is
quote
cringe.
is quote unquote cringe. Somebody's trying something and being a little different than everyone else. And that's now cringe. Cringe is essentially now defined as someone who is not following the social norm, right? They're
Mm,
not doing what all their other peers are doing. I mean, I hope I'm not being too hyperbolic here, but those people are going to rule the world. They're going to rule the world because they have decided at a young age that what other people think isn't going to define how they walk through the world. Those people are in a huge advantage. So I cheer every time I see someone
yeah.
be referred to as cringe because I'm like, they've strengthened a strong mental muscle that you are not paying attention to yet. And there's going to be a point where you'll be less cool, you'll be less concerned, and they will have a head start. So you can decide now that you want to care a little bit less about that, or at least start to do the mental work to understand the difference between, cringe and somebody who's doing something. And
Right.
you'll be a little bit closer if you make that attempt now.
Well, how many times have we seen that everyone's death wish or reflection back on their life is everyone says, I wish I would have cared less about what other people thought of me.
Yeah.
And if we can figure this out at 30, 12,
Yeah.
15,
Yeah.
like how empowering and how freeing is that? I
Yeah.
struggle with that too of, what will people think? And, who am I to teach this and doing the work? And we could get into imposter syndrome and, all the things that we experience in the corporate, it trickles down into all ages. And so why wouldn't we want
Yeah.
daughters, our sons to learn
Yeah.
now?
Can I tell you something interesting? That is it something I've recently started doing? And it's funny because I've never talked about this on a podcast, but part of the challenge is we live in the highlight reel era where we
Yeah.
see people doing their best work, posing in their best, angles and flattering lighting and sharing their wins, myself included. Like we don't want to be the Debbie Downers of the internet. So I'm not sharing about how my kid didn't want to eat the dinner I worked hard to prepare. Like nobody cares, right? So I feel like I don't talk about that stuff. And I remember once somebody came into my DMs and was like, you just are like success after success after success. You are killing it. You're on fire. And I was like, oh, thank you. That's very kind. And then in the next statement, they were like, is it ever hard? Like, do you ever have a bad day? And I was like, wow. I'm generally an optimist. And so it didn't really occur to me I don't dwell in like the negative stuff that much. But what it made me realize is that I accidentally have created this persona of constant highlight reel, and so I was very honest about it. I said, yeah, here are some things that have really been hard for me lately, have really
Mm,
gone wrong. A thing where I was recently rejected. I really wanted it. A time that was really hard for me at home. Like I gave this laundry list of things and they're like, Henna, you have no idea how badly I need to hear this because
uh,
been comparing myself to you and comparing myself to your journey, and I just needed this so badly. And so that inspired me from time to time with people who I trust, right? But people whose careers I look at as aspirational, and at least we have some sort of friendship. I'll occasionally like shoot them a message and say, hey, you're killing it. I would like to say inspired. And part of me doing that is understanding like the behind the curtain stuff. Can you share like something that's been hard for you lately? Or something that didn't go your way, and they're like, absolutely, like happy
yeah.
to, they're like thrilled to share it because
Because criticism doesn't come from the top. They want to share the
hmm
journey, the authentic, real journey.
yeah. But it's weird because they want to share it, but at the same time, social media doesn't reward the people who whine and complain regularly. So we've got this weird paradox of like we crave this. We want to know people's real, but if somebody's too wah, on the internet, then we're already having enough of a hard time with the uncertainty and
Yeah.
challenge and change that we don't want to invite that in, or we don't want to be accosted by it. But then
Yeah.
it creates the tilt too far the other way. So I feel
Right.
like you can do this, as a youth athlete, you can do this as a business professional, is don't force other people to have to pop the highlight reel bubble. Ask them. Occasionally ask them. Like, have you ever had somebody tell you that your content was trash? Have you ever had somebody, criticize you to your face after something? And how did you deal with it? We all have our stuff. What you see
Yeah.
is not what you get. So, like,
Right.
have these conversations. Don't make your own assumptions.
I think the magic of that is that these conversations are going to be happening in community
Yeah.
because the community, I think what the next generations are going to find out is community is not Snapchat. Community is not
Yeah.
Instagram. Community is not TikTok. That's a past
Correct.
community. Some of the coolest moments, we host a retreat once a year where it's the only softball camp where you leave your glove at home, and these girls will come, and for 3, 4, 5 days we will create this community where they're allowed to talk about the non-highlight reel stuff,
Oh, I love it. I
and
love
we're
it.
not, but
Yeah.
that's the thing, is like you don't have to wait for a retreat. You don't have to wait. We do this in Fearless Warriors inside of our community, but I think with the rise of AI, you and I both can nerd out on AI and all the
hmm
amazing things that our world is going to see, but
Yeah.
it's going to increase the desire for community. And so when you are fostering that community, what you're saying is, I'm in the DMs, I'm fostering these relationships. It's like, how can we, as leaders in our spaces, foster more of that community? And I don't know if that's more
Yeah.
time at the end of a keynote, more time at the end of a workshop, more time at the
Yeah.
end of a Zoom training, to just say, okay, you've learned about
Yeah.
the skills. Can we all just have a conversation in this safe space?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the business context, I tell leaders all the time, it doesn't need to be an hour. Carve out 5 minutes. So I call them, have your people share cracked egg stories. They're essentially like, when did you step on it this week? Right? When did something go sideways? Whether it was an accident, just purely an accident, whether it's you tried something and it didn't go as planned, a mistake, a blunder, an embarrassing moment, whatever. But it's hard for people to feel like they want to be the ones to bring it up. So when it becomes part of the design, right? We're
Mm,
already meeting, we're already at practice. right? It doesn't need to be an hour. It's just we're already here. We're already in community. Can we carve out 5 minutes for this? And man, does that 5 minutes go fast? And does everybody immediately feel more like, oh, thank God it's not just me? I think the danger of social emotions of discomfort, like awkwardness, like embarrassment, is when we're in them and when they're heightened, it feels like it's just us. It
Yeah.
feels like nobody else. That confident girl over there can't possibly ever feel that way. She is just always like on it together. I mean, listen, I, as a 43-year-old woman, can still think of the girl in eighth grade that I'm like, she is always just, she never feels awkward about anything. Like, I can picture her to this day. Fun fact, yeah, she did. In fact, we're like friendly now. She still does all the time. But I told myself a story that she never felt that way because in my mind, I never saw it. And so I think creating those spaces that are intentionally designed for those conversations is a really powerful, frankly, modern day structure that we maybe didn't need. But now with the highlight reels and the phones and all that, we need
Right.
it more than we did in decades past.
Yeah. So if you're a coach, this is my shout out to my coaches that listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
The temptation is we have to work harder on the X's and O's. We have to get to our practice plan. 5 minutes is not that long. If you want to
Yeah.
create massive results with your teams, like think about the amount of trust and vulnerability that this is going to create within your little unit of that's going to work far more
Yeah.
to build camaraderie and trust
Yeah.
and just authentic, real connections where I can be awkward in front of my teammate and I know she's going to have my back because I know, that like the egg. What did you call them? Cracked egg moments?
Cracked egg stories. Yeah.
Cracked
Cracked egg
egg
stories.
stories. I love that.
And there's weird ripple effect too. Like if you get to know something about one of your teammates that's like a little bit of that cracked egg, you look at them differently. It's
Yeah.
not that they were not human to you before, but they're even more human to you now. So now when they have, a misstep on the field, it's weird. We get less angry or less impatient or less frustrated because it becomes a little bit more of like, oh, this was a play that went wrong versus this person sucks and wasn't paying attention. Like there's a deeper humanization that it creates, which again, like you said, creates that like stronger team dynamic, stronger bond. Most of the time, just to let your coaches know, the first few times you do a cracked egg story type exercise, it's probably going to be like pretty surface stuff, right? It's
Mm,
not going to be the deep, like people aren't going to be like, oh, I'm having a really hard time with my home life. Like it's probably not going to be
right.
that. But with repetition, 5 minutes every single week, people start to expect, oh, part of our practice is we're going to have these cracked egg stories. Once they start to expect it over time, then they start to bring a little more, a little more. But it's the habit that creates a little bit more of that the psychological safety, that trust. It just needs to be carved out. That's it.
Psychological safety. Nailed it right there.
Mhm.
So cracked egg stories. You're a mom, you have
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
Do you use this with your kids?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do cracked egg stories, and my other one that we do. So I ask the kids to share those, and then the other dinner table question we ask. We have 3 dinner table questions. So what was the best part of your day? What's something new you learned? But then the third one is sort of the good awkward question, which is what's something that gave you butterflies today?
Ooh.
So the question is intentionally one that could go in several directions. So something that gave you butterflies. Look, I have a 15-year-old daughter. It could be, so and so looked at me today, right? Okay, that could be one version of it. But generally, they know that that question is what's something that you did that felt a little uncertain, that you weren't sure how it was going to go, but you did it anyway, right? Like you raised your hand in class or you volunteered to be the leader of the group or you asked somebody new what their name was, right? And the goal of the butterflies thing is we always are very clear about this at dinner. We don't really care how it went. Like it didn't really matter if it was successful. We're like, awesome, you did that. That's great. And so what we're trying to do is twofold. We're celebrating the process, not the outcome, right? That part is built in. But here's the second part, and it goes back to what we talked about with the cracked egg stories. We ask this question regularly. So we're also priming them to look for butterfly moments. So they're not always going to have one. At every dinner, they don't have one, but they know that when they have one, we celebrate it, we applaud it. So it kind of creates this training for them on the day-to-day basis to look for the moments to raise their hand even if they're not ready, to look for the moments to introduce themselves to a new kid because they know how happy mom and dad are when they do that. So it's got that sort of double-sided benefit.
That's incredible because I know our parents are going to immediately try this because some of
Yeah.
the things that we're already talking about in our community is,
Yeah.
parents are craving for their teen. I just want her to open up to me. I just want her to talk to me. It's like, well,
Yeah.
this is going to take a little bit,
Yeah.
a lot of the time versus a little of the time. Somebody just recently said that. What's that quote?
Yeah.
A little,
Yeah.
a lot, a little.
I like it. I like it. And again, I'm no parenting expert, but I will say that with my ninth grade daughter, one of the things that I found to be true, and this is something that I do as an executive coach with my clients, so I started practicing it with her, is I find the more specific my question, the better. So if I ask her something like, "How was school? How'd you do? Like, what's going on with you?" Like, I don't get much, right? So if I say something like, you know, ninth grade friendships can be so tricky. Is there anyone in particular who's been a little like hot and cold lately? And she'll like, yeah, so and so has been that way. But it's a very specific question,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not a how are your friends these days? Anybody being crazy? Like it's like I read somewhere that at this age people can feel very hot and cold, like your best friend one day and you're not. Is there anybody that you hang out with that feels like that a little bit lately? It's so specific that it's almost hard for her not to engage with an answer. So that's something I've been just playing with transparently. And I
Yeah.
am finding that it's having really good results, just being a lot more specific with my ask.
Yeah. One of the things that I've been doing I have young kids. So I have my
Hmm.
youngest is 2 and 3 and 7 is what did you do with your hands today?
Oh, I like
Very
that.
visual. Like, what did you do with
Yeah.
your hands today? Well, a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old are going to tell you the dinosaurs or the dollies or
Yeah.
I play, who did your hands play with today? Like, oh, that sounds
Yeah.
not
I
that question.
they're young, so it's not weird yet. My middle schooler
Yes.
and high schooler would answer that. They'd be like, "Mom."
This is weird. Another question that came up from you. So I'm assuming you and your husband answered those questions too.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, it's a go around the table. It's all of
Yeah.
us. It's the four of us are answering those questions. And it's funny if sometimes we'll get into conversation based on one of them and
Yeah.
the topic gets derailed. And my kids like get mad if we don't all go. They're like, Mom didn't go yet. Mom didn't go yet. It's again, it's the first few times we did it, they're like, okay, mom's asking the questions. Now they don't even think twice. Like it just
Right.
has become ritual. And
Mm-hmm.
um it's funny how when they start to become owners of that ritual, they're the ones who become the enforcers. They're like, "Oh, the dad didn't tell us what gave him butterflies yet. He only answered the first one." Like they start to become the polices of the
Yeah.
question, which I love, right? It means that it's that much more deeply ingrained over time.
Well, and if it's deeply ingrained, they're going to go off to college, they're going to go off into
Yeah.
their own worlds, and it's not going to stop. I mean,
Yeah.
think about the relationship that you're fostering. I can't wait 10 years down the road. You're going to be getting those
Yeah.
texts, right? Of
Well,
like,
I hope so. And I think, one maybe saving grace depending on the age of the coaches and parents that you're having, listen to this is it's never too late. I mean, I only started doing this with them 2 years ago. So
mhm,
they're 15 and almost 13. So
yeah,
I haven't been doing this with them since they were 4. This is
right.
relatively recent. And I honestly think, if I'm being very transparent, like born from the fact that as preteens and teens, I was starting to feel the distance and like
Yes.
difficulty in connection and the difficulty of risk taking in front of their peers. That was really ratcheting up. And so for me, it was like, okay, we need to be very intentional about creating structures and tools as a family that support the type of people we want them to be. But you could probably start doing it with little kids and then keep it going. Or if you have a 17-year-old, start now. Like it's never too late to start incorporating questions like that.
So good. So the question that's coming up for me now is we've talked about this in depth. You've given some really great tips. What was the spark that
Mm.
launched you headfirst into this research about this social emotion of awkwardness?
Yeah. Lived experience. Like people are like, you're a keynote speaker. You seem eloquent now. I mean, I am firstborn child of immigrant parents. I did not feel eloquent or confident or cool at all growing up. As a firstborn immigrant kid, my food smelled different, my clothes were different. I just felt like I stuck out like a sore thumb. And all I wanted was to be, I was born in the early 80s. So all I wanted to was to be a Jessica or a Jennifer or a Samantha, but I was Henna. And I was like, just wanted to fit in so badly. And I felt like all my obsession and focus was on just blending in and not sticking out. And it wasn't until I got to college and probably like into my first job that I think I started to find my confidence in a new way where I started to finally feel a little less awkward in my own skin. But then when I started working, I would find that in every transition point, like new job, more responsibility, bigger promotion, trying something new, it felt like all those little henna feelings came back. I was like, oh my God, I feel awkward again. I feel like that version of myself again. And so I just got very curious about this emotion. And specifically in the business and professional development world, Brene Brown has this tagline that she would start to use. She would say, stay awkward, brave, and kind. That became her little sign off on podcasts. Stay awkward, brave, and kind. And I remember hearing that being like, okay, Brene, like you are everything. I love you. Stay kind, yes. Stay brave, yes. But like, stay awkward. I've been fighting this one my whole life. What do you know about awkward? And I realized that there was just this gap of a deep dive about this emotion in particular. And call it selfish research. I just wanted to understand what made people feel that way, what made that feeling linger for some, made it dissolve quickly for others, and that's where it came from.
And here we are,
And
which
here
is
we are.
incredible. I would
Yeah.
love, we'll make sure that we link your book below, and
Thank
where
you.
on socials would be the best place to follow, to keep learning
Yeah.
as your evolution keeps rolling forward.
Yeah, I'm Henna Pryor in all the places. So HENNA PRYOR. Instagram and LinkedIn are probably the two. So I'm the only Henna Pryor. You can look those up. And for any of the parents or coaches listening or youth, I recently did a research study on social muscle. So social muscle strength and social muscle atrophy, which is sort of this, our willingness to initiate conversations, ask for help, stay in difficult conversations. It is mostly centered on working America, but there's some really good data in there. And that's at my website, prioritygroup.com/study. It's a free download. So if anybody is interested in understanding, especially coaches and parents, how some of these social dynamics are showing up, it's a good place to start.
I cannot wait to dive into that. I would
Mhm.
love to see that. This is going to be the best way to end. I know you're going to have an amazing answer to this. This is our final
Yeah.
question. We ask
Yeah.
this of everybody. You're a time traveler. You can go back in time and give your past self one message. What would you tell yourself?
Oh, it's taking it back full circle. People are not watching you as closely as you think. They are not picking apart your missteps. They are not picking apart your hair. They are not picking apart the pimple on your cheek. They might have noticed it momentarily, but they've already moved on. Like, live your damn life.
I love it. Thank you so much for your time today. This has been a great conversation.
So much fun. Thank you for having me.